if I wanted to manipulate you into favoring Trump over Biden, what I would want to do is highlight everything negative about Biden that I could and omit focusing on things negative about Trump. And that's something that I could use to manipulate you in that direction.
Let me clarify this detail for you. If you're a content creator in the political news business, it is good for business, excellent for business if Donald Trump wins. A Donald Trump presidency would be outstanding for content, whether you're a left-winger or a right-winger. The kind of chaos that he's going to bring is going to bring a lot of opportunity to make a lot of money, just like his last presidency, right? So a little bit of a conflict of interest, whether you are, again, left-wing, right-wing media, centrist media. Joe Biden is boring, right? He's boring. He just goes out and does his job. I think he does it really well below the level that he should, that any U.S. president should. But regardless, that's what he focuses on, doing his job. Donald Trump, it's scandals and rhetoric and him acting goofy, saying stupid things, and just it's a reality show, right? He's a reality TV star. So that is much more interesting as far as content, right? So Breaking Points, the Young Turks, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, these guys will benefit tremendously if Trump wins. So just keep that in mind when you're watching their content.
I took a look on Breaking Point's channel, and although Donald Trump has recently had many episodes of things that are equally concerning, him waving to a crowd that's not there in reality, as opposed to them pretending like Biden tried to sit on a chair that wasn't there, but the chair was actually there. Again, in Trump's situation, he is actually waving to a crowd that's actually not there. I didn't see a coverage on Breaking Points. Trump mixing up the name of his doctor while bragging about his cognitive test results. Even the fact that he's bragging about his cognitive test results is the kind of thing that someone in mental decline would do. I mean, that's not something an insane person. I mean, a billionaire of his age, the idea of, I passed the cognitive test, and I could identify the animals, and that's a lunatic behavior. I literally searched on Breaking Points for videos with Trump's name in it to see if there's any videos focusing on those things. They didn't. So again, if I wanted to manipulate you towards Trump as opposed to Biden, that's exactly what I would do. Why is it that Breaking Points is using the exact strategy that I would utilize if I wanted to manipulate you towards Trump and away from Biden? Now, I'm not saying they're trying to get people to vote for Trump, right? That is absolutely not what I'm saying. But what they're doing is something that would lead to that outcome potentially. So you have to ask yourself why that is. Now, there are monetary reasons to do what they're doing, and maybe that's the reason for it. There's also political reasons. I'll leave it to you to decide which one is actually the case. Anyway, let's just get started with part 2 of this video series. Again, I think he's too old to be president. Right? I think his age is a great risk. I just don't think this video is demonstrating that.
With a TikTok guy.
And I know you're a typical press guy. You're grabbing me in front of this all this stuff. And I trust you as far as I throw your phone. I can have a good on, man. I can throw a long way. But my point is this.
I can trust you as far as I can throw your phone. Remember those words, and look at how they're described later on Breaking Points. Who is going to replace the mainstream media, right? Mainstream media is so dishonest, right? So biased. Listen to how a real journalist describes what Joe Biden just said. And he's the right-leaning guy, so if he says something that's incorrect, surely Crystal will correct him.
I made very clear to the Israelis what they have to do in the near term. If they don't, what's going to happen?
What's going to happen? Is he just going to cut off funding?
This is a crooked politician being a crooked politician. He knows that he's wrong and how he's dealing with the situation in Israel, right? He is basically subservient to another country, a small country like Israel. He's pretending to sort of, be tough with them, and meanwhile he's letting them do whatever. So the crooked politician thing is to gaslight and pretend like that's not the actual case. But on top of that, he's also doing it as a really old guy, right? That's the other level. So there's a crooked politician gaslighting, and then there's a really old guy doing it. And that's what we're seeing here, right? There's also a little bit of an elitism and disdain for the press. Ironically, this is something we'd normally put on Trump. You're being called out for your policies with Israel, and rather than standing and defending those positions, you want to gaslight and pretend that that's not the case, and sound a little bit disrespecting of the press, right? This is not a respectful way to engage with the press, right? You can be a politician and try to cover yourself and use sophistry and whatever, but the aggression that I'm sensing here, inappropriate.
Because usually you tell me I have a nice hoodie, you didn't wear my shoes today, so I'm feeling
So being led away by Obama, I mean, the optics on that are just horrible because it's already
100% agree.
The former president, the most popular Democrat in the entire country, leading away the aging president. Weird interaction with the Pope. That one, that might not even be age. That's just vintage Biden. Then you've got...
I appreciate that. So he did actually acknowledge my own points on that. That could just be Biden being Biden. Like, that's just his personality. It was awkward, it's weird, but it's not something to be concerned with. But also consider that they're trying to make a case that his age is a huge problem. And even though he's right now saying that, okay, that's just Biden, like that's not anything, not a big deal, but he's including it in his case. He's making his case. Like, here's the evidence. We have him giving a thumbs up to a parachuter. We have him supposedly touching heads with the Pope, right? So that's a little bit like talking out of both sides of your mouth, right? If you're going to make a case that, you know, his age is a serious risk in terms of him being president, and then two of the things you mentioned don't demonstrate that in any way, right? And then you have one that actually does. Like, there's something wrong with that, right? So it's like, if I'm in a court of law, I'm trying to prove that I didn't commit a crime, and then I'm giving you three pieces of evidence. The first two pieces of evidence are irrelevant. They don't really demonstrate anything. Only the third one does. Like, that's a bad way to make your case. He's really making his case in a very, very horrible way.
Got him having an old man moment with this TikToker, where the backstory is that this guy was invited to a VIP reception at the White House, and then look how angry Biden gets at him, threatening to throw his phone when
he did not threaten to throw his phone. Now we can analyze, like, if you want to focus on old man stuff, was that an old man thing of him trying to say, I can trust you as far as I can throw you? Right? Was that what he meant to say? Did he actually mean to modify that, you know, common sentiment? Did he actually mean to modify it and say, instead of throwing you, throwing the phone, just to express his disdain for this guy? Was that the idea? But either way, none of them gets you to the conclusion of him threatening to throw his phone, right? If you were going to say that that's him threatening to throw the guy's phone, then if he said, I can trust you as far as I can throw you, right? Then you would say, well, he's threatening to throw this person. Like that. Listen, no one thinks that. When you use that expression, I can trust you as far as I can throw you, no one thinks that you're threatening to throw the person, right? It's understood that it's a figure of speech. And what I'm trying to point out here is how there are so much extreme level of efforts to try to point or frame Biden in the worst possible light. Joe Biden on his own does that very, very well. His position on Israel, his gaslighting of the American people, the fact that he's so old. I mean, the way he like in that G7 summit, he did not look like a very powerful leader. He looked like someone that you could walk all over. That's the way he looks, right? So reality is bad enough, right? If you want to make a case that he's too old, like, I agree, and showing how bad he looked at the G7 summit, like that's good enough. To me, that is a good case to make. But why do you need to add to it, wandering around, didn't know where he was? Like, it's almost as if you don't think it's bad enough. I think it's bad enough how bad he looks. But apparently these people either don't think that's bad enough, so they need to go and exaggerate, or just like mainstream media, they're focused more on the views and engagement and how much money they can make, and trying to get the video likes and whatever. They're more focused on that than actually reporting on the news and reporting on the truth. You tell me what you think's happening here.
he just asked the question about Gaza, he immediately calls him some typical press guy, I could throw your phone as far as I can. So you got the orneriness.
So he says it a second time, and he says it even worse. He's saying that Joe Biden says, I can throw your phone as far as I can. He absolutely did not say that. He absolutely did not say that. This guy, as an actual journalist, knowing how there's a lack of critical thinking, right? And people think a lot very emotionally. So he should know better that it's irresponsible for him to be saying things like this that are factually not true. Like, Biden did not say that, right? But he should know better to know that in the minds of his audience, just like how when he said they were touching heads with the Pope, and I processed it as a fact because I was just watching the video. Hey, I'm not a robot, right? I'm very analytical. I do use a lot of critical thinking, but I'm not a robot. So I'm not going to analyze every single detail. You can slip some things by me like he did with the head thing. And maybe they did make contact. But again, I didn't see that demonstrated. I didn't see actual proof that he did that. I just saw a video of him awkwardly kind of getting close. And by him saying those words, I processed that he touched his head with it. And I know we're getting in the weeds. Like, whether he touched forwards or not, either way, it was kind of awkward. But either way, like, who cares? That's not even something that's like representative of anything other than the fact that he's old, and we know he's old. That's not something that's like, oh my goodness, Joe Biden's an old guy. We know he's old. We know Trump's old. They're both old, right? Don't demonstrate that two old guys are old. Demonstrate that their age is a problem. Him being awkward, getting so close to the Pope, does not demonstrate something that is relevant to him being the leader of the United States of America, right? Him thumbsing up a parachuter does not demonstrate anything that we should be concerned of regarding him being the leader of the country, right? The image of him alone, not the thumbs up, just how he looks. He just looks old, and he looks like I could talk circles around him. He looks like he's someone who could be easily manipulated. That's the way he looks, right? That is a problem in my view, right? We don't need to make up stories about him being lost and wandering around to make that case.
You've got the wandering away. You've got all of this literally happening in the span of like 72 to 96 hours. There's no spinning this away. It is what it is.
Yeah, and with the TikTok guy, I mean, there's a lot to say about that one because first you have, these are TikTok influencers you invited to the White House because
literally.
there's an assumption that they're like, you know, gonna be on your side, et cetera.
Yeah.
You're
100%. 100%.
antagonizing them. You don't seem to really understand who they are or why they're there. They're not some typical press guy. And then when he's asked a question about Israel, are you going to keep funding Israel? I mean, there's such a long pause too before he can marshal any sort of a response. Then ultimately aides have to swoop in and rescue him. I mean, this is just on like the simplest possible and most obvious question.
Valid points. Now let's watch Brian Tyler Cohen try to gaslight us about the fundraiser. And that's the one event out of all of these events. That's the one event that I'm like, okay, right? Because that's showing beyond just an old man being an old man. You're on stage with a crowd of people and you're just like freezing up. And also there was one where they showed like him at a thing where people were dancing and stuff and he wasn't dancing. That's kind of like, I don't know, right? I don't think Joe Biden is the kind of dancey person. I'm not a dancey person. If I was there, I might be looking just like Joe Biden. The only difference is I'm not as old as he is, so I would be taking in, I'll be looking around. I'll be looking around at different things. But he's an old guy, right? He's an old guy. Old guys are just not as animated as someone who's younger. But take a look at this.
What he always does, which is just waving at the crowd. He was literally in the room. I was there. I was at that event at the Peacock Theater at LA Live. Joe Biden was doing what he always does, which is just waving at the crowd. He has a long history.
Of course, Brian Tyler Cohen was at a $30 million fundraiser event as just a YouTuber, but he's at that level to get that level of access. I wonder why.
Ad nauseum during the State of the Union. He was in that room talking to people so long that the C-SPAN cameras literally turned off. And that's what he was doing on that stage. He was just waving at people who were waving back at him to the point where Barack Obama.
Brian Tyler Cohen is pretty smart. I think he does some pretty good stuff. It's just unfortunately he's a propaganda channel, so his skills are kind of wasted. So if you watch this video, you will see that he's very uncomfortable because a lot of uncomfortable truths are exposed in this, and he knows better. So he's stumbling and stuttering, and he's just not as smooth as he normally is, right? Because he's gaslighting people, and he knows that he is, right? The idea that Joe Biden was just waving at people, sure, I think earlier in the video he is waving at people, but that's separate from what we're talking about. We're talking about the freezing, not the waving, right? He could have been waving at people for 15 minutes, and then he froze, right? But we're talking about the freeze. Don't mention the fact that he's waving at people. Okay, fine, waving at people. No one's commenting on him waving at people. We're commenting on the time at which he stopped moving. He's on stage, and it's kind of like, what's happening, right? He's a really old guy, so at his age, his health is an issue. So when we see things like that, it's not like he's a younger guy. An older guy potentially freezing on stage is kind of like, okay, what's happening there, right? That's not, trying to be manipulative or trying to go after Biden. That's a reality, right? If Trump did the same thing, I would have equal concerns. But Brian Tyler Cohen, in my view, is being dishonest here, pretending like he was just waving at the crowd when clearly he was not. Anyway, tell me your thoughts. This is Debate Me channel. Debate me in the comment section below. Click on the like button, subscribe, smash that bell. Be well.